I'm Terri Markham with Uprising, and we are here for another It's All Connected video. It's actually been a little while since we made one, but it is October, and October is actually Fair Trade Month. And so I am here with a friend of mine, Emily Betzler, who has a wonderful organization based out of Wyoming. And we are going to do an interview with her to learn a little bit more about fair trade and fair trade principles. So Emily, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to get to share with you guys.
All right, so my first question is just, can you tell us a little bit more about Bought Beautifully and its mission?
Absolutely. So yes, I run Bought Beautifully, which we like to say we are a nonprofit marketplace where every purchase transforms lives. So in essence, we partner with small producers, primarily in vulnerable communities, to come alongside them and either sell the products they're already making or help develop products and create products that we can sell for them, ultimately with the end goal of creating jobs, dignified jobs for them. Our mission, which is sort of a really broad mission, our mission is to inspire interactions that enrich lives, restore hope, empower people, and shine God's love. So it's a very broad mission, but the scope of our work really is creating dignified jobs through commerce. So we sell the products, which in turn creates jobs.
I love it. I've been a huge fan of Bought Beautifully for as long as I've known about it, which has been most of the time I think that I've lived here in Wyoming, and probably like my favorite place to purchase my own jewelry, especially from. But I love when I go into your shop, how there's a ticker in Emily's like brick and mortar shop, if you get the opportunity to shop in Wyoming, and it actually just like ticks with how many jobs opportunities are created with each purchase. So it's pretty cool.
Yes, yeah, we really like to try and give people like a tangible picture of what their purchase means. And so we've averaged across all of our partners. So, it's an average, but, and then as you check out, it tells you how many days of dignified employment your purchase created. And it is really powerful because sometimes I think we look at so a $30 pair of earrings made in Haiti, sometimes for us, it's really hard to understand, how does that matter? But when the average person in Haiti is living on less than $2 a day, a pair of earrings really does make a difference, and creating jobs that wouldn't be there is really powerful. So it's really fun to get that visual as you check out, oh, I did that.
I know, I love it. It's one of my favorite parts about going into the shop. Tell me a little bit more though about why you even started Bought Beautifully. What brought you to this road, and how long have you been an organization?
Absolutely. So, there's the long story and then the shorter one. So I'll kind of condense it down. Ultimately, it really was a personal faith journey that my husband and I went on, and then also just kind of a life experience. And we had met studying abroad in Costa Rica. We had always thought we'd live and work abroad. And we ended up in Wyoming. If you haven't been to Sheridan, if you live here, you know what happens. You fall in love with it. It's just an amazing community. So we ended up settling here, working, kind of doing the American dream. We both had two jobs, two great jobs, houses, our first house, then we flipped it for our second house, and we're just kind of going down that trajectory. And then we went and visited my brother-in-law in the Peace Corps in West Africa. So the country is called Gambia. It's one of the smallest and poorest countries in the world. And it was one of those experiences that just, you can't shake. And we'd experienced poverty before, but we had never really quite experienced what the Gambia has, which is a combination of extreme poverty and then just lack of women's rights. So we drove by a female circumcision camps where girls as young as 10 or 11 were being circumcised out in the middle of the wilderness. And we met women who had never been to school, never learned to read and write, had no opportunity. And it just really changed our hearts. And so when we came home, we just knew it's one, you have those life experiences where, you're like, we can't go back to being the same. Mm-hmm. And so we really started praying because we felt like, we feel like we're supposed to be in Sheridan, but we also know that we can be here and we can play a role in impacting other people's lives. There's got to be a way that we can ultimately, I think we said, use the gifts we have to impact lives. And it was one of those times where sometimes, God answers prayers and sometimes he doesn't. And for us, it was very, very clear that it was yeah, you know what, I have I have blessed you. Your ability to buy things is a privilege and you can use that well. And so we really started being like, all right, how we spend our money matters. And so we started researching, trying to find small organizations that were creating opportunity ultimately, because that was one thing we saw when we were in the Gambia, is just like, there's nothing, there's no opportunity for these women and the communities in general. So we started, finding these small organizations, and I would say to my husband, like, this is actually so cool. There's so many organizations out there doing really good work, and it's really fun to support them. Someone should make this easy for people. Someone should bring them together. And then all of a sudden we felt like, oh, I think we're supposed to. So that is how Bought Beautifully was born. And that was about 10 years ago, probably 11 years now, when we sort of started the journey, wrestled with it, prayed through it, made just different commitments, and then decided, okay, we're going to do this. And it took us a while to figure out how. And then we are 8 in October. So right now we are turning,
Awesome.
and yeah, so we are 8 years old, and yeah, it's been a exciting journey for sure.
Really amazing, really amazing. Cool to hear that story, because I actually haven't heard that story as long as I've known you. I didn't even know the why. So it's fun to hear the background.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about fair trade in general. Like, what does it mean for something to be fair trade or made with fair trade principles? Why does that matter?
Absolutely. So, I think, and the more we've done this, more we've just realized, like, that the economy has so much power. I think we all know that. That's why, like, labor statistics are ones that people always look at. What's the unemployment rate? Because ultimately people need jobs to create wealth, to meet their needs. And so fair trade is really taking that idea and saying, yes, but it has to be good for everyone. And so it's laying out a set of principles that are saying that the people who are creating your products are paid a fair wage for their work. And then there's also, the components of that they're working in safe environments, they're working in that it's like a mutually agreeable situation for both people. And that seems like it should be the basis of all business, but it's really not. The more you're no stranger to exploitation, and I'm sure all of your listeners, like, the human nature, unfortunately, is often to exploit. And so our economic system is full of business practices that really don't value and honor a human. And so fair trade is just that idea of trying to create fair commerce.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah, there's a couple. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go. No, you go.
I was just saying, you had asked about. So there's a couple, like, you can be fair trade certified, and there's a few different, like, organizations that do that. And then you also can just abide by fair trade principles.
That was going to be kind of onto my question.
Okay, yeah.
So I know one thing that you've done is you've actually had the opportunity to go out and visit some of the people who are making the goods that you're selling. And can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, all of our partners are not necessarily fair trade certified, because for some of them, that's like a process that's it's time consuming and it's expensive. But all of them, we have an application, and all of them go through it, and they agree to all the fair trade principles. And we like to say we're fair trade plus, in that, all of our partners are doing more than just, like, the bottom line. It feels like they're all adding in addition. They're partnering with victims of human trafficking, and not just giving them new jobs, but holistic healing and counseling. They're working in some of the most desolate communities, and providing whatever needs there are, education, things like that. So there's a lot of depth to our partners programming, but I think it's just really inspiring. So we've had the privilege to visit our partners in Nicaragua and Costa Rica and Haiti and Peru. And I think one story that stands out in my mind was our partners working in Lima, Peru, up in the, shanty towns are sort of like really high on the hills. And one of our partners is literally building their home brick by brick. And they, after work, buy a brick and they walk it up, these huge amount of stairs to build this home. And so they're, like, currently living in, a little tin thing, and they're building their home around it. And that was just such a powerful visualization of, one, that opportunity, jobs letting them do this, but also how hard they're really working to create a safe home for their kids. So any chance we go, I think it always just drives home that heart and that reminder of, like, we really are so materially blessed here in the United States. Like, we have just, and not to say that there's not poverty here, that there is, but really material poverty we have a lot of stuff, and so many people just don't have access to much. And so the idea that we can use what we've given to really change lives, that just, anytime we come home from a trip, we come back newly empowered and inspired to be like, this work matters, like this, we should do this.
That's amazing. So you just mentioned human trafficking, so that's a wonderful segue.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the intersection with fair trade work and human trafficking. So it might seem obvious, but let's talk about it anyway. Where do you think you see that intersection between, let's say, labor trafficking specifically and fair trade?
Yeah, so I think, that it actually, I think a lot of it does come down to opportunity. And I think, especially I think in the States, maybe sex trafficking looks different than globally. But ultimately, I think the root cause for most trafficking, especially globally, whether it's labor or sex, is poverty. And it's the lack of opportunity. And then obviously education plays into that. And so, most people who are ending up in, whether by choice to be like a sex worker or by force, certainly by choice, it's not necessarily their first choice, but they don't have other options because there is an opportunity, there aren't jobs there. And then by force, it's also similar that people have gotten to that place because poverty, because there's just not that many opportunities. And so, we have a lot of partners who work directly with victims or survivors of human trafficking, but we also have a lot of partners who know that the root cause, that if they can create jobs that value human dignity, but also see the holistic community needs, so that kids need safe places to go after school. Moms need to be able to bring their kids to work in certain situations. That is a big piece of ending human trafficking before it starts.
Yeah. That's what
so that might have been a little bit of a roundabout to get to your answer, but I think they're really intertwined. I think they're really intertwined.
Yeah, I love that some of the work that you're supporting, it's preventative because it's creating that opportunity before someone gets to the point where they're exploited. But then I also know a lot of the work that you support also is helping people who are finally able to get out of exploitative work and now have that dignified employment. And it's awesome. We've actually I feel like we're starting to uncover a little bit more in Wyoming. There's more conversations happening around, especially labor trafficking. People have been getting on board with the idea of sex trafficking, but labor trafficking is still something people aren't looking at. And as Uprising's been trying to learn more, it's a little bit staggering to look at. It really does change you. And it's rough out there when you see all of the stuff that's being used and made with forced labor, and then you're kind of like, where can I even shop? We need way more Bought Beautifully.
When we first started, so there is a quiz, I'll have to look online, but it's like how many slaves work for you? And
I took it this week just to like recheck my number, and it's still like 40 something was my number.
Yeah, and it's just so eye-opening because you don't realize the amount of that most industries in some way or another have some sort of exploitative piece to the puzzle. Like it's just really hard, from batteries where they're being mined to food where it's being picked. It's just like, it's pretty.
Yes, I think I heard you mention raspberries the other day, and I'm like, oh no, because I buy the raspberries you were talking about, and I'm like, uh-oh, I'm about to ruin raspberries for myself when I ask you about to tell me about that story.
Yeah.
What do you think is the impact of knowing where those dollars are going? Like, tell me more about the impact and how many days of dignified work you guys have been able to create in the work you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. So actually, I knew you had mentioned asking some of these questions, and I had remembered this. Actually, it's right here. This poster we made when we first launched 8 years ago, so it's pretty outdated, but it had some interesting stats in it that I pulled up. And I think it's really good for us to remember, like, you don't have to do everything, and every little bit matters. And so it's older, but in 2012, Americans spent 225 billion shopping online. 225 billion shopping online. So if we just spent like 2% of that, that's still $4.5 billion that could be poured into organizations that are, rehabilitating victims of human trafficking, that are providing fair jobs, that they are providing safe places for vulnerable women to work, that are just doing business well, so that communities in China or Cambodia can rise from poverty without having to work 80-hour weeks, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really good to remember, like, we are an economic powerhouse, and we don't have to change every single habit we do, but we can change some of them to have a really profound impact. And I think Bought Beautifully is like a good example of that. We're small, you know, we don't have big contracts. We're a small nonprofit based in Wyoming. But my husband did have this great idea to start tracking how many days of employment our purchases created. And we didn't do it the first year, but we've done it since then. And we've created 50,000 days of employment. Like, that's huge. And that is 50,000 days that people that are our brothers and sisters, you know, our neighbors, global neighbors, that they aren't working in forced labor situations, that they aren't working in sweatshops, you know, like, and so that matters. Like, that's a really exciting statistic. And it's really, it should be exciting for us to know that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to commit to everything, but you can commit to small things, and it really does matter.
That's a really good reminder. I'm going to jump ahead on some of my questions, but one thing that I feel like in general, and I know even I have personally felt that this way, is like the idea of like, you almost want to stay ignorant to it, because the idea of like shopping fair trade and trying to purchase everything ethically kind of has this stigma of like, it's really hard to do. Where do you even do that? Especially in a place like Wyoming. I feel like we're really lucky that we have Bought Beautifully in our community, but most people don't. But even like going to the store and trying to purchase all the products, you know, there's that stigma of like, it's harder and it's more expensive. What would you say to people who kind of feel like that?
I would say that it's both a yes and no. I feel like that's sort of a nuanced question, because I think, like, if you're going to commit everything in your life to fair trade shopping, I mean, even the other day, Colin and I were redoing some things in our house, and I was like, you're going to have to make more money because we have to be true to our values. So everything we, you know, anything we buy, we got to figure out how to buy, you know, fair trade kitchen cabinets or whatever. So in some sense, because it's not mainstream, not every industry has it. And so either it is harder and it is more expensive. But you can also look at, like, there's plenty of fair trade products, I mean, non-fair trade products that cost more, you know, so there's like yes and no. And then also I think, so I think in general, it can be more expensive, but I don't think you have to have that mentality. Like, it's okay to be a work in progress. It's okay to be like, I don't have to be ignorant. I can know that I care about it. And so I'm going to go ahead and make the choices I can. So like, cause right now, you know, on Bought Beautifully, we have over 250 items that are under $25. So there's certainly something that you could choose that would be fair trade. But in general, like, you know, I look at clothing, and in general, yes, fair trade clothing is more expensive. And it is hard to sometimes get behind, like, okay, this t-shirt is almost twice as much. And I think it's important to know that, like, things that are good cost us, whether, you know, to be a good parent is harder than to be, you know, like to be a good friend, to do the right thing, it sometimes costs us. And so going and knowing, like, it is going to cost me a little more. I might be more picky and buy the shirt I love that I'll know I'll keep longer. But that it's generally like the extra cost you're spending is worth it. So it's generally better for the environment. It's definitely better for humans. And usually it feels better for you, you know, like you feel better. I think, you know, that's just human nature, like with what you're surrounded by and what you're wearing or caring about, like your heart feels better. So I think it's, you know, it's not an answer that you can definitely be like, yes or no. And, you know, we've been on this journey for a long, long time, and have gone from like, I mean, there was a year where like, we will buy nothing made with slave labor. And it's just, one, it's so hard to know anyway, because, you know, supply chains are just so convoluted, but it's also just not reality. And then there's a cost and benefit for some things. Like sometimes you choose to support local, even though it doesn't fit all your values, because you know that it's really important to have thriving local downtown businesses. Yep. So I think it's just taking that step of being aware, like, my expenditures are a gift, so how can I use them well? And then deciding, like, you know, I can find fair trade jewelry, so I'll say yes to that, but I can't afford fair trade coffee yet, you know, or, you know, and just kind of knowing. So I think it's both a yes and no.
Yeah. Well, I
think it wouldn't be fair to say that it's not harder, because you certainly have to work harder to find it, you know, and like,
Yeah, it's really hard to find stuff like, even when I'm just trying to Google, like, where does this product come from?
Yeah.
Sometimes I cannot find like the supply chain. I can't track it. And so you're like, I don't really know what I'm contributing to here when I buy this just off the shelf at a big box store or whatever. But I like what you said of, you don't have to be perfect. I think it's almost impossible. And what you said about, like, even if it was just like that small percentage of our spending, if we all were striving towards that, would make such a huge difference.
Yeah. And that's why I love that, because I feel like everyone could look at 2% in their budget. Everyone could say, I could figure out 2% of my budget to spend on fair trade. And it would be $4.5 billion poured into organizations that are doing this kind of work, you know? And so it is that idea that it's compounded. And so it's okay to make a small choice, knowing that, and if you tell someone else about it, they'll make it too, you know, like it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know for me, it's my Christmas shopping has changed. So all the gifts, that's a big time when I go to Bought Beautifully. It's my Christmas gifting. And even like through Uprising, when we have to buy speakers gifts and stuff for events, you know, I pop in there and I'm like, hey, I need speakers gifts. What do you have? Because it's just like any little thing that I can do, or I can be cognizant. And it's honestly, it's such a more thoughtful gift when I give people something that was bought fair trade, and then when they buy it from you, they get that little story of who the artisans were. Sometimes there's even like a handwritten like name of whoever created that on a product, and it's so much more like thoughtful than just like, oh, I just went and picked up some random thing to give you because I needed to give you a gift.
Yes.
Let me see here. So the only other thing I really have on here is I wanted you to tell us sort of your shameless plug, and let's talk about a little bit about October and Fair Trade Month, because Uprising is going to partner with Bought Beautifully. Yes, and we are going to be pushing the sale of these gorgeous earrings. They are called what? Sunrise
earrings. Yeah.
Sunrise earrings, hand beaded. And I believe it's women getting out of exploitation, right, who are making these earrings?
Yeah, so these are hand beaded. They're by our partner called Do Hope, who works in Rwanda, and they work in the red light district, and they want to provide alternative employment for women who are in the sex industry. So if you want to leave the sex industry, they want to employ you. And honestly, I think this would be the shameless plug, is they have more women who want to leave than they have job, you know, like we have to create the demand for this type of product, guys, because they can only provide as many jobs as they have earring sales. Because at the end of the day, the women have to eat, and they're either feeding children or taking care of themselves. And so they're choosing, can I make jewelry in a safe, positive environment, or do I have to do this kind of nasty sex work? But there has to be a demand for these type of earrings so that they can offer these jobs. And that's, you know, that's on us, which is exciting. That's our job, one as an organization about Beautifully, but as Americans, we can say, yeah, we want these earrings. We want her to have that option.
I mean, so, who wouldn't? Look at them. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, and these are doubly special to us and doubly impactful. They're part of a special product line where 10% of the sales is actually going to support a Rwandan literacy program. And so that we hope to send 35 Rwandans to literacy school. And this is part of our latest Through It All collection. And so everything in that collection is doing that. So you get to have double the impact, helping someone, teaching someone, allowing someone to learn to read, and then also supporting women to have alternatives.
And these earrings are cheap. I mean,
yeah. So when you talk about is fair trade, they're $21. And we constantly work at this at Bought Beautifully, is because we do want to make fair trade shopping accessible to everyone. So we are always looking at how do we, one, obviously honor the fair trade principles and our partners. That's the priority for us. But then at that point, like what can we sell these for so that people can afford them? And so for beaded earrings, I mean, if you look across the board, there are some very expensive beaded earrings. These are a great price and such a fun statement.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put the link to your website and directly to those earrings down in the comments. And we're going to be pushing, Uprising is going to push out these earrings through the whole month of October and try to highlight that as a really simple, easy product that you can just purchase, and you're supporting this great cause, something wonderful you can do to celebrate Fair Trade Month. And maybe, yeah, people can start to consider what small thing can they do? What 2% can they change so that they can be a part of the fun? It really does make
and
you
that's the
feel
thing.
good.
It is really fun. And I think the one thing we hear a lot from people is, that your jewelry will be commented on, and how much more exciting it is to say, oh, like I got it at Target versus, oh, you guys, this was handmade by an artisan in Haiti, a female artisan who is like defying all Haitian norms, has men working for her. She's an incredibly talented artisan, and I get to be a part of her story by wearing her earrings. Like, it's such a more fun story to get to tell.
I get so many comments on my earrings. I wish I could remember the story of each one.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't even know. I have the real fancy.
Yes, so those are Purpose, which is a leader. They have been working with women, exploited women for years. I don't even know off the top of my head, but for years, definitely a leader in the industry of recognizing the need to provide job alternatives, and then also counseling and support as these women get to exit. They have a sanctuary they get to go to sort of rebuild, and then they get job training and can rebuild their lives. And they're working in India, Mexico, and the United States.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I try to gravitate towards ones that I know have that specific purpose in mind.
Yes.
I get compliments on my earrings all the time. And you know what? Last Christmas when I went in there to shop, I must have picked up 3 pairs of these gorgeous beaded earrings, and I think they were $12 in your shop. $12. It's honestly cheaper than what I would have went and bought at a big box store, a gift. And
and I think there's certainly items. Yeah, that's why I say like yes and no, because there are certainly items that we're like, we can compete with Target. We absolutely can. And then there's items that we can't. But usually they're worth it, because that's the time, the energy, the love poured into them is it's worth.
I think
the amount of time
the ring.
Oh, yes.
Is also bought beautifully. I want to say it was like $35 or something like that.
Yeah, and that's actually made in Nashville.
And so I love the pieces. There are things, that they're going to last. You're going to wear over and over. They're not cheap and breaking, and they support something amazing. So I love it. I love all of it.
Thank you.
Where do we find Bought Beautifully to shop and to check out what you're doing?
So if you're in Sheridan, we are at 117 North Main Street, so right downtown Main Street. We are on Instagram, we're on Facebook at Bought Beautifully. We are just now joining the world of TikTok. We'll also be there a bit. And ultimately, though, we have a website, which is boughtbeautifully.org, and that is where you'll find the majority of our products. And we ship anywhere, everywhere. So that's,
I think you probably have a pretty huge, I feel like, online presence. Do you think more of your shoppers are online or in person?
It's close to 50-50, but we actually have more in person, and the nature of our products in person sell so fast, we don't always get them online because it's just a longer process of like photograph, write the description, and they're out the door. So in person has a little bit more of a larger selection of products, but online has pretty close to the same amount.
That's awesome. That makes me feel like an insider. I'm so lucky that I'm here and I get to shop in person. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Emily, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Terri, and thank you for the work that Uprising is doing. It's so great to see you guys being active here and empowering kids, especially. That's near and dear to my heart, but also the whole community. So thanks for that.
All right. Thank you, guys.